Hey y'all, welcome to the weekly live cast for radical nonviolent revolutionaries of all sexual and gender identities. I am so glad that you showed up today. I've been looking forward to this live cast all week because I've had a lot to do, and this is actually the moment that I live for, getting to teach and preach and things like that. But it's been such a crazy week at the brewery that we're starting. We've had things coming at us a million miles an hour. We're in full swing of this remodel, and this has been a challenge with doing church stuff and brewery stuff. It's just a crazy but wonderful season to be in. But know that Mike and I, our head brewer, we are busting our butts to get the job done because it needs to get done. But pardon me if I sound or look a little bit fatigued because I'm about 82 hours in the past like 6 days. It's been, or not even 6. Oh gosh, it's 5 days. 14, 13-hour days, 15-hour days. It's been long, y'all. So I'm a little tired. And that leads me to the topic of today's conversation because I think we're all exhausted. Are you feeling tired? Am I alone in that? Click like if you're feeling tired, y'all. Yeah. I'm sure I'm not alone in that. And I don't think it's just 2020. I mean, if we're being honest, I think we've been tired for about the past 4 years. I don't know why that is. There was something that happened 4 years ago that just caused people to be incredibly stressed. I don't know what that could have been. You know, maybe you know more than I do. I'm just kidding. We all know what it was. And here we are coming into next week, and we're on the cusp of potentially unseating this tyrant turd waffle. We're potentially going to oust Trump from the highest seat of power in the land. And I don't know about y'all, but I am just stoked. I'm ecstatic, and I'm sure you probably are too. At least if you're watching this sermon, you're probably pretty excited. And by the way, before we get too far into the conversation, this is a friendly reminder that you have to vote if you haven't already. Go out there, do your civic duty, and do me a favor. Don't wait till the last minute because those ballot boxes aren't like the voting lines, y'all. They close right at 8 o'clock, even if you're in line. So get your tail out there and get it done because in my lifetime, this is the most important election that I have experienced. So do that civic duty. And duty is what this democracy, quote unquote, feels like sometimes, right? Duty. Yeah, it stinks. And maybe you might need a little bit of prodding to go vote because you're less than enthused about the two vastly problematic candidates that we have before us. But here's the thing. We're not picking the most ideal candidate this time around. And that's unfortunate. You know, I would love to see better candidates in my lifetime, and let's bust our butt to make that happen. But at this point, the options that we have are choosing which candidate we would like to protest against. Now, we have an inappropriate, tone-deaf, bland, corporate centrist that is just so out of touch, but happens to have an amazing VP. You know, I'm Team Harris. I make no apologies about that. Or we have a violent, racist dictator that has literally been endorsed by every prominent extremist group in America, and some of which that are abroad. So, in my mind, I'm not a doctor, but one of those two choices should be a little bit easier than the other, but you got to make up your own mind for yourself. But it seems to me like one is a little bit easier than the other. And you know, it was clear for me which choice that was. And I am pretty sure that things are going to work out well. I could be wrong. I could be. So don't, you know, hold me to that next week or the week after when we find out the results. But I had a bit of a wake-up call about how I've been treating this week coming into the election. And it totally brought me back to earth. This week, our brewer, Mike, and I, we just, hit the ground running, as I said before, with sprucing up the brewery and painting and getting new furniture and making sure we get the systems that are going to be in place for outdoor service together. I mean, there's so much to do and so much more to do that you just don't even consider until you get in there. So it's a lot of work to get that space up and running. But luckily for us, we have been busting our butts and we've been getting it done one thing at a time. And unfortunately for us, every time we get one thing done, we find 3 more things that get added to the list. And what I noticed, is when you complete one thing, you move on to the next, and that causes you to realize, oh my gosh, we have to improve so many more things than what I thought. And what I realized is true about the brewery is also true for a country that has a history of oppressive, bigoted, sexist, and anti-science ideals. There's so much work that needs to be done. There's so much work that needs to be done. And even if I get the candidate that I think should be an easy choice, that doesn't necessarily mean that everything's going to be fixed. So I think what this brewery sprucing up has taught me is that the work for justice isn't complete just with a hard day's work. It's going to take many, many days, and the work may never be done. But friends, no matter what happens, I want you to remember a couple of things to get you through this next few weeks, because it is going to be stressful. I'd be lying to you if I said it wasn't. So first and foremost, I think everyone watching this needs a hefty dose of patience. All right, that's really hard for me to say because if you know me well, you know how patient I are not a patient person. But just because the polls close this coming week does not mean we're going to get immediate results. There are thousands upon thousands upon thousands more mail-in ballots that have to be counted. It could be a week, it could be 2 weeks, it could be a month or 2 before we know the final results of this election. So be patient. The second thing that I think you need to remember, and this is stressful, but also it's encouraging in the same way. I think you need to realize that we're not going to wake up in November, no matter who wins, to a completely just society, even if that preferred candidate that I mentioned earlier emerges as the victor. We're not going to just wake up and step into a just and equitable society. We're still going to have to make a daily decision to tackle issues of inequality and iniquity. It's not going to end because we have 2 problematic candidates. I would say that one is vastly more problematic than the other, but I'm not going to sugarcoat this. We don't have an ideal situation here, but it's because we don't live in an ideal country. It's because we have a history of not doing ideal things, and that takes time to unpack, and it is a lot of time. It might be our lifetime to unpack. Accepting this is so important, I think, to your anxiety and to your levels of stress. At least it was for me. And I think of communion when I talk about the work of justice often because I think Jesus knew this, right? I think Jesus was communicating one of the most powerful truths in social justice initiatives with communion. I'm going to read this from the Gospels. It says this: "When the hour came, Jesus took his place at the table and the apostles with him, and Jesus said to them, 'I have eagerly desired to eat this Passover with you. For I tell you, I will not eat it again until it is fulfilled in the kingdom of God.' Then Jesus took a cup, and after giving thanks, he said, 'Take this and divide it among yourselves. For I tell you that from now on I will not drink of the fruit of the vine until the kingdom of God comes.' And then Jesus took a loaf of bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it, and he gave it to his disciples, saying, 'This is my body, which is now given for you. Do this in remembrance of me.' And he did the same with the cup after supper, saying, 'This cup that is poured out for you is the new covenant in my blood.'" Now, this week's communion may be the most significant communion dialogue that we've had all year long for this very reason. Because the essence of the Last Supper is that Jesus was passing not only bread, but the torch and the responsibility of the cause of the early church to every member of the movement. Everyone seated at the table had a place on the front lines, and Jesus spent his last meal communicating this truth to his followers. It's one of the wisest teachings I've ever seen, because sadly, that's how the legacy of social justice initiatives live on. It usually lives on in those that follow us, and it never comes to fruition in the lifespan of the one that started it, or the ones that carried it along the path or made significant steps and strides. A lot of times, the work is never done, just like it seems to never be done at the brewery. But think about it this way. Had the cause of the early church rested solely on the shoulders of Jesus, then the message of the gospel would have been nailed to the cross. But Jesus knew that this thing that he was starting, this movement, this community, this message, it had to be bigger than just him. It had to be longer than his own lifespan. Communion reminds us that betterment is both a team responsibility, but also an individual mandate to keep the cause moving forward. So we can't just rely on one person to get it done. And this kind of flies in the face of evangelical theology that tend to believe that the work was complete with Jesus and everything is now done and you can live your life how you want because everything's taken care of. That's not the message of the gospel at all. The message of the gospel was, look, I challenged these systems. I stood up to power. I spoke truth to evil. They're coming for me, but it can't die here. So I'm giving it to you. Church, friends, if you're drained from toiling for justice, from hearing me talk about justice, from living under the boot of a tyrannical toddler, know that it's not going to be done in November. We're going to have to get comfortable being uncomfortable because we have created a society of unjust discomfort. So today, if you have something that is food nearby, it doesn't have to be bread. If you've got a beverage nearby, I've got a little keto Jesus here with me today. Know that as you take of this bread, whatever it may be, and you drink from the cup, that if the Gospels taught us anything, it's that the greatest sacrifice that we can give and the greatest gift that we can give is that of our own lives. It's that of expending our breath for the cause because we're giving it for the downtrodden, even if it means we don't get to see the fruits of our labor sprout forth from this broken earth. So regardless of who wins this election, know that America still has a lot of loss to recover from. There's still quite a bit of work that needs to be done in that brewery. And by the way, y'all, know that I love you, that no matter what happens, you have community here at this church. You have a place to belong, and you have a group of people that have your back no matter what. And no matter who wins, know that this community is going to be a giant thorn in the side of empire because that is a direct teaching from the gospel that I adore. I love y'all. We'll see you next week. Hold fast. We're going to get through this. And hopefully this is the absolute last time I have to say it, but fuck Trump. Love y'all. Grace and peace. And now, may the revolution of Jesus go with you wherever it may send you. May it guide you in healing this wasteland and protect you through the storm. May it lead you through this world seeking the justice it demands for you and for others. And may it bring you home preparing to continue love's mission beyond your doors. Grace and justice to you.